Welcome back, everyone. I am so thrilled to have you here for this explainer where we are unpacking some truly fascinating astrological concepts. Okay, let's dive right into this. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the practical realities of having Shukra, or Venus, positioned in the fifth house of an astrological chart. We're going to decode exactly what this means using the ancient wisdom of Lal Kitab, but we're combining it with the very modern, highly practical application of Astrovastu. Whether you're a seasoned astrology buff or just kind of curious about how planetary placements literally affect your day-to-day life, the insights we're covering today are going to be completely eye-opening. Now, before we get too deep into the specific traits and remedies, I really want to emphasize something absolutely crucial. The insights we're unpacking in this explainer aren't just theoretical. They aren't just pulled from reading dusty old texts. They are actually derived directly from expert, practical analysis of over 24,000 individual astrological charts. That is a massive data set. It means what we are discussing today is based on real people, real lives, and observable patterns. This is applied astrology at its absolute finest. So, here is our roadmap for today. 1. Personality and career traits. 2. Romance, marriage, and family. 3. Wife's health and fortune. 4. Planetary clashes and warnings. And finally, 5. Astrovastu home remedies, where we'll cover some highly practical adjustments you can make right at home. All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, Personality and Career Traits, the Artistic Soul. So the fifth house is naturally the domain of the Sun and Jupiter, and from a traditional standpoint, Venus is actually an enemy to both of them. Now, you might think, uh-oh, that's bad news, right? But it actually produces some pretty magical results in specific fields, and this brilliantly illustrates how a person with Venus in the fifth house is often a profound connoisseur of the arts. You will frequently find this placement in highly successful people working in the film industry or as absolutely incredible dress designers. It's also super prominent among successful physicians, as well as hakims and vaidyas, traditional healers. They possess this naturally charming, flirtatious nature. But there is a catch here. If they let romance totally consume them, their career will inevitably take a massive hit. Moving right along to Section 2, Romance, Marriage, and Family, the Karmic Ties. Because the fifth house is famously known across all astrological texts as the house of romance, placing Venus, the literal planet of love, right here brings up a really pivotal question. Should you have a love marriage? Given the placement, you'd probably assume the answer is an enthusiastic yes, but Lal Kitab takes a surprisingly strict stance on this. It actually strongly advises against it, unless you have the explicit, willing consent of your parents. The reasoning here is deeply rooted in karmic logic. In astrology, the sun represents the father, and remember, the fifth house is the sun's domain. So if a person with Venus in the fifth house rebels, runs away, or forces a marriage that deeply hurts their parents, they are essentially offending that incredibly powerful sun energy. And the karmic backlash, it's severe and honestly a bit poetic. Lal Kitab warns that if you break your parents' hearts for a marriage, your own children will eventually refuse to call you their parent. The karma rebounds directly onto your own relationship with your future kids. Now, what's really interesting about this next concept is how it explains their connection to their family home. Think of the difference between a dog and a cat. If an owner moves to a new house, the dog happily just follows the owner, right? The dog's attachment is to the person. A cat, however, is deeply attached to the physical house itself. A person with Venus in the fifth house is exactly like the cat. They are incredibly attached to their physical home, deeply invested in staying super close to their family, and they find it tremendously difficult to just up and leave the house they live in. They genuinely prefer to be surrounded by their family unit at all times. That brings us to Section 3, Wife's Health and Fortune, the fire's heat. Venus represents the wife, and the fifth house, being the sun's turf, is a domain of intense, literal fire. There is a very powerful metaphor used to describe this specific clash. Sitting near the fire, you might save your clothes, but you will still feel the heat. Because the wife is sitting directly in this fiery house, she is constantly exposed to that elemental heat. What this means in real practical terms is that she will inevitably and consistently suffer from health issues. She can protect herself up to a point, sure, but she will always feel the heat of that placement in the form of physical ailments. But here is the fascinating, surprising twist to this whole fiery dynamic. Despite her ongoing health struggles, the wife's presence is an absolute anchor for the individual's prosperity. As long as the wife is alive, the individual's business, their work, and their overall fortune will never completely shut down. Her life energy, even if it's physically challenged by the placement, structurally supports his luck and his career. It's an incredible bond. Let's move on to Section 4, Planetary Clashes and Warnings, Vulnerable Ages. Of course, Venus doesn't always sit alone. When other planets join Venus here, that massive analysis of those 24,000 charts reveals that very distinct challenges manifest at incredibly predictable ages. So the crucial point is knowing exactly when to be on high alert. Let's walk through this. If Rahu joins Venus, the vulnerable ages are around 10 to 11, causing severe educational breaks, and again at age 21 with risks of abortion. Saturn joining Venus targets ages 19 to 20, and then again from 36 to 39, almost guaranteeing some sort of bad name or deformation, along with delays in childbirth. The Sun sitting right next to Venus creates extreme difficulty in having a male child. K2 with Venus is actually generally quite favorable, though it does carry a slight pregnancy risk. Knowing these ages is like having a cheat code for exactly when you need to be cautious. Finally, let's get into Section 5, which is all about the solutions. Astro Vastu home remedies, shifting the energy. So what happens when you have these challenging combinations, but say you live abroad and you don't have access to traditional temples or specific river? Well, that's the absolute beauty of Astrovastu. You can shift planetary energy simply by adjusting your own physical home. To maximize the positive effects of Venus in the 5th house, we essentially want to establish Venus in the 2nd house, which perfectly corresponds to the northwest zone of your living space. Here are the exact step-by-step instructions. First, locate the northwest zone. Second, place an image of the child form of Lord Krishna right there. Third, and this detail is super vital, Krishna must be eating butter specifically from a fallen, broken pot where it's spilling out. Finally, do not place this in your home temple and ensure the image is not facing south. Doing this actively pulls the absolute best possible Venus energy right into your life. Let's see how this builds into an ultimate blueprint for career and financial success. If you happen to have the Sun clashing with Venus in the 5th house, you need to energetically move the Sun. You do this by physically placing a large copper artwork or 2 1-kilogram pouches of jaggery in the east zone of your home, because that represents the 1st house. Boom, now the Sun is in the 1st house. To support this even further, you shift Mars to the 3rd house by making sure your kitchen or a stash of sweet items is located in the south zone of your home. Now, if you naturally have Jupiter in the 9th house, or if you activate that energy, you suddenly create a physical environment that completely mirrors a 1-5-9 astrological combination. In astrology, this is considered an unbelievably lucrative, powerful alignment for unmatched luck and prosperity. It's literally mind-blowing when you think about how interconnected our physical living spaces are with our overall life's trajectory. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly important thought. If the exact placement of an image or even where you store your sugar can quite literally shape your astrological destiny and career luck, what energy are you unknowingly creating in your living space right now? Seriously, take a look around your home today. You might just find the key to unlocking your own fortune. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.